So it's been an interesting week for Sony with a lot of longtime fans kind of realizing something. PlayStation is changing. Like, even if you came into PlayStation fairly recently with the PS4 or go back as far as I did with like the original PlayStation, things are a lot different now, especially with how they're navigating this transition from the PS4 to the PS5. And I think a lot of this has to do with the new leadership there with Jim Ryan and Herman Holst. And after this recent press release disguised as a Q&A, there are a lot of things to look into here, and I wanted to go over that with you guys today because I don't think PlayStation's done changing by a long shot. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. If new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. So the biggest thing out of that Q&A that people walked away with was cross-gen support. This is a big change for Sony and PlayStation, and I don't know if people necessarily realize it as much, but Sony's first-party studios don't really do a lot of cross-gen stuff at all. In fact, I was trying to think of like what big cross-gen titles they did, even going from the PS2 to the PS3 or the PS3 to the PS4. I really couldn't think of much of anything. It was basically, okay, any game that they were working on, say for the PS3 at the time, even if it was going to be released after the PS4, like Gran Turismo 6, they just put it out and moved on. That was kind of it. They didn't go, oh, this should also be on the PS4. Nope. They just kind of moved along with it. And I say that because Horizon Forbidden West, God of War, those started as PlayStation 4 titles, and all of a sudden they were like, oh, let's also put these on the PS5. In fact, let's not only put it on the PS5, let's kind of work it into some of these PlayStation 5 state of plays, and oh, they kind of look like they're PS5 exclusives, and we'll tell people they're PS4 also, you know, later on down the road. I mean, Gran Turismo 7 was the most blatant, where it said PlayStation 5 exclusive. At least with Horizon Forbidden West and God of War, they were very vague with it, never put a PS5 or PS4 logo on it until it was time to tell everyone that, yeah, God of War, that's also going to be on the PlayStation 4. But typically, Sony really did believe in generations. They would break away from the old generation and go to the new machine, and this being the PS5, Mark Cerny sat up on stage for about an hour, telling us about the shape of our ears and just how awesome and how fast that PS5 was. So naturally, a lot of people are looking at this and they're kind of confused. They're like, well, wait a minute, so these are going to be like PS4 titles that are moved up to the PS5. Does that mean that they would be held back by the PlayStation 4? Well, technically, yes. I mean, they started development on the PS4, so they had those limitations in mind when they created just the overall scope of the game, the mechanics for the game. And Mark Cerny really went in depth with how the SSD would change the way that games are developed fundamentally. But if the game starts on the PS4 and just happens to end up on the PS5, it's still going to bring those world-building limitations, for example, with it from the PS4. So I have to imagine that's one of the big things that stuck with people when they heard about all of this cross-gen, and also realizing, wait a minute, this isn't usually what Sony does. Now, I think it's worth mentioning, obviously, that Sony is still putting out games that are only on the PlayStation 5. I think the biggest one right now that I look at and say, yeah, that probably isn't something that's possible in the PS4, Ratchet Clank. That's one I look at and I say, yeah, that's not, I don't see how that would be really possible based on what they are saying with the SSD and shifting between dimensions as they are really hyping that up. Probably not something they would be able to replicate to that same degree on the PS5. Returnal, yeah, that might be doable on the PS4. Demon's Souls, I think so. It was technically a PS3 remake, sure. So I think Ratchet Clank is the one that probably will at least set that new bar for PS5 only games. But it's not really going to be God of War, Horizon Forbidden West, or Gran Turismo 7. And I think one of the biggest disappointing factors here for people is if you want that PS5 only Horizon or that PS5 only God of War that should take advantage completely of the system, you're probably going to wait another 4 years. Like, it's going to be one of the last games out on the PS5. That's just the way it is with these big budget games. You don't get them very often. So I understand why there is some disappointment when it comes to this, because people thought they were going to be getting that PlayStation 5 only Horizon that would completely take advantage of the hardware. We have not played these games yet. That's another big thing. But even when they come out and people are playing them and they look great and they run well, there's going to be that thought in the back of your mind. It's like, what would this be like if it wasn't also a PS4 title? See, because when Sony went to the PlayStation 4 from the PS3, they weren't really concerned about the 80 to 85 million people on the PS3 for the most part. They still released, like I said, Gran Turismo 6. I'm sure with some other games thrown in there too that came out after the PS4 was out, but for the most part, it was up to third parties if they wanted to do cross-gen games. Sony had moved on. We had Killzone come out, with Knack, and I'm not saying Killzone or Knack were these crazy good games or anything, but you would look at them and say, oh, wow, yeah, those visually look impressive. Killzone in particular looked really, really good at the time, going from the PS3 to the PS4. I pretty much looked at that and said, yeah, okay, that makes sense. The PS4 it's doing things that I don't think the PS3 would necessarily be able to do. So we see Sony changing things up here with a lot of cross-gen support from their first parties all of a sudden. But there is something that was pretty big in this Q&A that I think is going to become a much bigger topic here over the next couple of years. So I want you to look at this part of the Q&A here where they asked, how does PC fit into the worldview of PlayStation Studios moving forward? This was from Herman Holst. We're still early on in our planning for PC, and Horizon Zero Dawn has been very successful. I think it shows there's an appetite for gamers outside the PlayStation ecosystem to experience the amazing portfolio of games that PlayStation fans have enjoyed for years. But I want to emphasize that PlayStation will remain the best place to play our PlayStation Studios titles at launch, but we do value PC gamers and will continue to look at the right times to launch each game. Ben's studio just released the PC version of Days Gone on May 18th, so that's about 2 years after the PS4 release, and I hope that a new set of fans can and will enjoy that title, and that's the goal. We want to reach new gamers who haven't yet experienced the great stories, characters, and worlds that we've built. Releasing games on PC will not come ever at the expense of building an exciting lineup of great console games. All right. So this is where I would have done a follow-up question. All right. I would have more or less kind of zoned in on the idea of, would you guys ever release a title same day one, on PC and on console? Because I'm going to tell you now, I think it will happen, and I think it's going to happen in the next couple of years. I believe Sony is trying to figure out a title or a franchise they can take a shot at and say, all right, this is going to be on the PlayStation and it's going to be on PC at the same time. Will it affect PlayStation sales negatively if we have it on PC, or will we only gain sales by putting it on PC? I believe they're going to test this. And I think the reason that it was answered in this way is a very roundabout way. It's not like you can say, okay, we're not going to be doing any kind of launch on PC at the same time as PlayStation in the future. They just say, I want to emphasize that PlayStation will remain the best place to play our PlayStation Studios titles at launch. Doesn't mean the only place. If you said that, if you said, I want to emphasize that PlayStation will remain the only place to play our PlayStation Studios titles at launch, kind of slipped that one in there, if you noticed, right? So, yeah, I kind of think Sony is exploring this, and I feel like it's going to happen, and that's going to be the big shift for PlayStation. Then I think people are going to look at and wow, things are really changing with PlayStation if they're willing to put a new Uncharted game on PC alongside of PlayStation. Maybe the next Horizon game is on both. You know, that could be a 4-year cycle from there. Sure, that could happen towards the end of the PlayStation 5's life. Maybe a live service game is in the works now, as Sony had mentioned with their investors, and it's Last of Us Factions, a multiplayer. Let's say that launches on PlayStation and it launches on PC day one at the same time. That seems like a strategy going forward for Sony, kind of the way they're wording it here, something they'd explore. And I think the other big thing is they're trying to work out a way to have a launcher on PC. All right, so that way they can tie together things like trophy support and all of this with the PlayStation. Basically, do what Microsoft's doing, where they build an ecosystem that doesn't necessarily have to exist on just a console. I still think Sony wants to sell consoles, much like, probably more so than what Microsoft wants to do, but I do feel like Sony is starting to look around outside of their console ecosystem and go, well, we could develop for mobile. We could develop for PC. Could we release these games on all these different platforms at the same time because they see how much money Fortnite makes, I'm sure, and they're realizing, wow, there is an audience for live service games off of PlayStation. There's an audience for PlayStation games off of PlayStation. Can we do that? I feel like they're looking at it right now. Herman Hulst and Jim Ryan are businessmen first and foremost, and I think that's coming. And I think that's the biggest thing here to realize is that Jim Ryan is a very calculated businessman. You don't think he noticed that Horizon Zero Dawn had a 250% return on investment, meaning whatever it costs to port to PC, they made back quite a bit of money on that. So them looking at that, probably keeping an eye on Days Gone, and then they're going to do Uncharted 4. These PC releases are starting to accelerate for Sony. I wonder why they would move Uncharted 4 over and not the trilogy that got a remaster. Is it because the next Uncharted game is going to release on PC at the same time? Maybe one of their live service games is an Uncharted multiplayer themed game. There's a lot of questions with that one, isn't there? So something to think about with that. And like I said, as soon as a game comes out, same day from Sony first party studios on PC and on PlayStation 5, I think a lot of longtime PlayStation gamers and fans are going to look around and realize that it's not the same PlayStation they may have grown up with. But let me know what you guys think about this whole thing down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.